It started with a clean fork. I reached for one during dinner, and my mom looked at me like I'd grabbed a knife. "That's for guests," she said, and snatched it back like I'd done something shameful. She swapped it with one that had a slight bend in the handle, mine. That fork had been mine since I was 15. My name's Bram Holloway. I'm 29 now, and this started when I was 24 in Dunridge, Pennsylvania, a town where people tracked your life by your truck and your church pew. Dad, Galen, used to run the night shift at the paper mill before it shut down, but he carried that same tone of authority straight into the kitchen. If he said something, that was it. No room for follow-up. He'd sit at the head of the table like it was a job title. Mom, Maris, kept her image spotless. She ran the church's charity kitchen and could make a prayer circle out of gossip if she wanted to. Everyone liked her, sometimes even I did, when I forgot how much she controlled everything. Growing up, I didn't have a key to the house. Mom would meet me at the door after school like I was a visitor. My school ID, birth certificate, even the $60 I got one Christmas from Aunt Janie, they all lived in her locked desk drawer. Quick note: before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. And let's continue. When I was 16, I started working after school at Spence's car wash. I got tips and small bills, but they didn't go into my pocket. Mom said it was safer in a family account. "You'll thank me later," she'd say, folding up the cash like she was doing me a favor. I didn't see any of it again. Every time I tried to step outside their box, the walls closed in. I once set up a Gmail to start job hunting, and the next morning Dad told me my digital footprint was sloppy. I never told him I made it. He just knew. I wasn't allowed to drive farther than Mayfield Gap, and if I stayed out too long, Mom would text things like, "You okay?" But the way she typed it, it never sounded like love. It sounded like a warning. After my 24th birthday, I sat in the bathroom staring at my own face, and the thought landed hard. I could be 40 and still asking permission to leave the county at all. So I made a new email at the library, real careful, and I applied for a job at an auto parts store in Mayfield Gap. I didn't tell a soul. 2 days later, I got an interview. That night at dinner, Dad passed me the peas and watched me too long. Mom was washing clean dishes like she couldn't scrub hard enough. I said nothing, and the next morning, I got in my truck before sunrise and drove towards something that finally felt like mine. I parked in the far corner of the lot behind the auto parts store, sat for a minute with the engine running, then shut it off and told myself to stop looking nervous. My hands were sweating against the steering wheel, and I wiped them on my jeans before heading inside. The front guy smiled and waved me back. Walt Renner, mid-40s, clean button down, a face that said he used to be friendly. He shook my hand with a decent grip, but the second we sat down in that little break room, his energy shifted. He leaned back, folded his arms, and looked me over like he was waiting to catch something in my face. Then came the question, "Is there anything we need to know about your background?" I blinked, then frowned, trying to play it cool. "Like what?" Walt didn't answer right away. He sighed and glanced at a folder he hadn't opened. "I got a phone call yesterday. Said there was a theft case, some kind of charge you pled down on. I don't want to pry, but I need to know if there's anything that might come back on me." My stomach turned over. "I've never been arrested," I told him. "Never even been close. I've never stolen anything in my life." Walt nodded, slow, like he was still thinking it over. I figured maybe it was a mistake. But the guy who called sounded pretty sure. Wouldn't give a name, just said I'd want to know before hiring you. I didn't ask who. I didn't have to. That question didn't come from the world. It came from home. Walt looked like he wanted to believe me. I could see it, but he also looked like a guy who'd been burned once and was still carrying the scar. He said he'd let me know within the week. I thanked him and walked out knowing it was already dead. I drove back in silence. No music, no radio, just the sound of the road and my pulse in my ears. When I pulled into the driveway, Dad was already on the porch, legs crossed, newspaper folded like he hadn't turned the page in an hour. He glanced up, smiled like a neighbor, and said, "How'd it go?" "Fine," I said, flat. He nodded. Not happy, not sad, just like he'd marked a box off a list, like this was part of the schedule. Over the next few weeks, I hit every lead I could find within 50 miles, a garden center just past Kepler Ridge, a family-run print shop in Dunridge West, a county park job out in Kenton Falls, maintenance work, outdoors, nothing fancy. I even printed my resume on real paper and started dressing like I already had the job. It didn't matter. Same pattern every time. Someone would show interest. I'd drive out, sit through the interview, sometimes even get a good vibe, then nothing, or worse, an email that read like a polite refusal. We've gone another direction. We filled the role. Best of luck. But every time I saw that quiet drop-off, my mind circled back to Walt's question. Not because I thought they all got the same call. I knew they did. Because I knew who made it. That kind of sabotage didn't come from strangers. It came from people who knew just enough to poison the well, but not enough to care what it cost. One morning, I got back from another dead end and found my mom rearranging the spice rack like it was national news. She said without turning, "Job hunting's hard these days, isn't it?" I looked at her back, then left the room without answering. That was the moment I knew this wasn't about me failing to grow up. It was about them making sure I never left. I stopped pretending it was bad luck and started looking for someone who'd just tell me the truth. That's how I ended up at Reba Satter's Cafe just outside Kenton Falls. It wasn't fancy. Vinyl booths, chipped mugs, a bell over the door that rang too loud, but Reba looked you in the eye when she talked, like she didn't have time for games. She wiped her hands on a towel, sat across from me, and didn't bother with fake smiles. "You want honest?" she said. "I wouldn't be here if I didn't." She leaned in a little, lowered her voice. "I got a call about you. Woman. Said she was concerned. Told me you had a record and some anger problems. Said hiring you could bring trouble." My chest tightened so fast it felt like I got hit. Concerned. That word again. My mom wore it like a uniform. I kept my voice steady. "Did she give a name?" Reba shook her head. "Didn't need to. She talked like someone who expected to be believed." That was enough. I thanked her, paid for a coffee I didn't drink, and walked out before I said something that would stick to me later. That night I didn't sleep. I waited. The house went quiet around midnight. Dad's TV clicked off, Mom's footsteps stopped pacing overhead, and the hallway settled into that still kind of silence where every sound matters. I gave it another hour just to be sure. Then I moved. Mom kept a small office space off the kitchen, more like a command center than anything else. Church schedules, donation lists, phone numbers, everything ran through that desk. The drawer she always locked wasn't locked that night. I slid it open slow, careful not to let it creak. Inside were folders stacked neat, labeled in her tight handwriting. I moved them one by one until I found a blue ledger shoved toward the back. It didn't belong with the rest. It looked personal. I opened it. Columns, dates, names of businesses. Every place I had applied. Next to each one was a small mark, clean and deliberate. Check marks lined up like someone tracking progress. Some had notes written beside them. Called, sent email, left message. My hands went cold. Then I saw the line that locked everything into place. Mention court record if needed. I stared at it for a second too long, then snapped the book shut like it might burn me. There wasn't any doubt left. No guessing. No benefit of the doubt to hide behind. This wasn't protection. It was control with paperwork. I put everything back exactly how I found it, down to the angle of the folders. I closed the drawer soft, stepped out, and went straight to my room without turning on a light. The next morning, I didn't wait. I walked into the kitchen while they were both there, Dad with his coffee, Mom standing by the sink, and I set the ledger flat on the table between us. Mom froze mid-sip. The cup hovered in the air, then lowered slow like it suddenly weighed too much. Dad didn't touch it. He just looked at me. "You want to explain this?" I asked. Mom broke first. Tears came fast, shaking shoulders, the whole performance. "You went through my things," she said, voice cracking. "Bram, that's such a violation." I didn't raise my voice. "You've been calling my jobs." "I was helping you," she shot back. "You don't understand how the world works yet." Dad finally spoke, calm as ever. "We're protecting you. You're not ready for what's out there." I felt something snap clean inside me. "You're lying about me. You're telling people I'm a criminal." Dad's expression didn't change. "We're managing a situation." "I'm leaving," I said. "If this doesn't stop, I'm gone." He didn't blink, not even a second. "If you walk out," he said, steady and flat, "you do it with nothing." The room went quiet. I reached down, grabbed the ledger, and slid it back across the table toward them. I didn't slam the door or scream on the way out. I packed slow, like every motion had to matter. One backpack. I filled it with 2 shirts, a hoodie, socks, underwear, a charger, my toothbrush, and the photo of Grandma Sylvie I kept in a cracked frame at the back of my dresser. It was from a fall picnic when I was maybe 8. She had her arm around me, both of us laughing like we knew the joke and nobody else did. I zipped the bag, turned around, and there she was, Mom, standing in the hallway with her arms folded so tight her knuckles looked white. No more crying. Just that sharp voice she used on church volunteers who messed up the food labels. You really think this is the way? She asked. Running off like this? You're choosing strangers over family. Behind her, Dad didn't speak. He stood like furniture, solid, fixed, no movement. His hands were in his pockets like he already knew there wasn't going to be a discussion. I pushed past them without a word, stepped out onto the porch, and pulled out my phone. I opened my bank app and stared at the number on the screen. $4.06. I blinked, refreshed it, and stared again. It didn't feel real. The account I'd been putting money into since I was 16, birthday money, paychecks, odd jobs, was empty, scraped down to the bottom like it had never belonged to me in the first place. I turned back toward the doorway. Where's my money? Dad's voice was calm. It was a family account. That wasn't yours to touch. He shook his head once. It belonged to the house. I need my ID, I said. Birth certificate, social security card. Mom stepped forward like she was blocking a crime. That paperwork stays here. It's not leaving with you. Are you serious right now? Dad looked past me, didn't even meet my eyes. If you're leaving, then go. But you're not taking what's not yours. Then he shut the door. Just like that. No yelling, no goodbye, just wood on wood and a deadbolt sliding home. I walked down the driveway at 10:22 on a Friday night in early April with $19 in cash and no ID. Streetlights buzzed overhead. Crickets chirped like it was any other night, but everything had shifted. I wasn't walking away from a fight. I was walking away from a record that never belonged to me, a version of myself they invented and sold to everyone who would listen. I made it to the gas station off the highway by midnight, didn't even try to hitchhike. I just walked until my legs hurt. Inside, I bought a cheap water and some peanuts, then locked myself in the bathroom for 15 minutes trying to wash my face and make my eyes stop looking puffy. The mirror didn't help. I barely recognized myself. The cashier, Jessa Crow, didn't say much that first night. Just nodded like I was another story she'd already seen play out. She was in her early 30s, tattoos on her arms, black fingernail polish chipped from long shifts. On the second morning, while I sipped a burnt coffee and stared out the window, she came over, dropped a napkin next to me, and said, "They won't hassle you. Just tell them Jessa sent you." There was an address on it, Kenton Falls Shelter. I folded it, slid it in my backpack, and nodded once. That night around 9, I got a text from Dad. "Come home. Apologize. Maybe I'll stop." I stared at it, saved it, then put my phone on airplane mode. For the first time, I didn't answer. I saved it instead. I was done talking. I needed records. I followed the address Jessa gave me, took 2 buses, and walked the rest. The shelter sat behind an old elementary school in Kenton Falls. Brick walls faded, and a buzzer on the front door that crackled before it clicked open. Lorna Pike met me in the entryway. Mid-50s, short gray hair, no-nonsense sneakers. She didn't ask what brought me in. She just held out a clipboard and said, "Sign in here. You'll get a bed, a towel, and a locker." She had the calm voice of someone who dealt with everything twice already. She walked me through the rules one by one. Quiet hours, phone use, chore rotations. No lectures, just structure. At the end of it, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "You don't have to prove you deserve to be here. You just have to follow the rules." It hit harder than she probably meant it to. The bed was narrow, plastic frame, foam mattress. Didn't matter. It was mine. For the first time in weeks, I had a place to exist without checking over my shoulder. Over the next couple of weeks, I chipped away at the mountain. Lorna's staff, mostly volunteers in polos and name tags, helped me file for a replacement birth certificate, get a temporary ID, and open a new bank account in just my name. Every form took 10 steps. Every trip to a government office felt like rolling a boulder uphill, but I did it. One line at a time. I took small jobs around the shelter to keep moving, mopping the halls, sorting the supply closet, breaking down boxes. It wasn't for praise. It was to keep my brain from spinning itself into a corner. I also started job hunting again. This time I searched farther out, beyond Kenton Falls, beyond anywhere my parents might know somebody. I figured if I could outrun the reach, I could finally get free. I got a promising interview at a roadside diner in Redwater. Owner run, off the main highway. Cal Dermott, the manager, seemed steady. Handshake kind of guy. We talked for almost an hour. He said he liked my attitude, said I reminded him of his nephew. 2 days later, he called back. His voice had changed. "Look, Bram, I don't want to stir anything up," he said, "but someone emailed me a document. Looked official. Said there'd been an incident, something to do with theft and, hostility." He paused, probably waiting for me to confess or freak out. "What did the document look like?" I asked. "Letterhead, block font. Looked like something from an HR department. Enough to scare someone cautious, which I am." I thanked him for telling me. He hung up like a man who regretted being honest. Later, Weeks later, when I finally saw the full PI file, I recognized the formatting. My dad used to do safety memos at the paper mill, always the same blocky headers, same line spacing, same fake formality that made it feel real. That fake incident report came straight out of his old templates. Different words, same skeleton. I kept my head down, didn't tell Lorna right away, didn't want to mess up my spot, but the sabotage didn't stop with jobs. One afternoon, Lorna called me into her office. She was holding the phone in one hand and a clipboard in the other. "I just got a call," she said. "Guy claimed to be from the county. Said you have a history of violence and shouldn't be near other residents." My mouth went dry. "Did he give a name?" "No," she said. "But I've worked in this system 23 years. That's not how county workers operate, and I'm documenting it." I nodded, jaw tight. She believed me. But that wasn't the relief I thought it'd be, because I knew now this wasn't about stopping me from getting hired. It was about making sure no one gave me a bed. It started with a flyer at the library, taped up on the bulletin board above the Lost Cat posters and Bible study invites. It said Dunridge Community Roundtable, Public Forum. I knew what it was before I saw the speaker list. There he was, Galen Holloway, concerned parent. I didn't tell anyone I was going. I just put on an old jacket, pulled the hood up, and walked through the side door of the rec center like I was delivering pizza. Plastic folding chairs filled the room, the air stale with old coffee and floor wax. A scratchy mic whined every time someone leaned too close. I sat in the back near the exit, head down, shoulders hunched, not scared, just bracing. When Dad stood up, people clapped before he even said a word. He held a printout in one hand, like a man delivering something important. His voice was soft, careful, measured like a sermon. He said, "My son Bram has been struggling. He's been distant, angry, involved with the wrong people. We've tried everything, support, tough love, prayer, but he's refusing help. It's heartbreaking." He paused just long enough for the room to settle into sympathy. "He left home under confusing circumstances. We're not here to shame him. We're here to hope he finds his way back." I watched him deliver it like he'd rehearsed it. Not one lie you could prove, just the right mix of sadness and responsibility. A father trying his best. Mom sat in the front row like she was waiting for a camera crew. Hands clasped, lips trembling, eyes watery in all the right ways. The room practically leaned toward her. Someone passed her a tissue. She dabbed at her face like it was choreography. Nobody looked my way. Nobody asked if I had something to say. I wasn't on the list. I wasn't even on their radar as a real person. Just a problem being described. I pulled out a cheap spiral notebook I'd been keeping in my coat pocket. I wrote down every word he said, even the ones that sounded boring, because I'd already learned the hard way. Memory isn't evidence. After the meeting, I walked out before the chairs even squeaked back into place. By the time I got back to Kenton Falls, I could feel it in the air. The gas station where I'd been crashing between shifts got colder. Jessa still nodded, but she didn't talk much. One of the shelter volunteers, a guy named Milo, started saying things like, "I'm sure your parents are just trying to help." The trust was bleeding out of the room. Myrna Keats, who always gave me her leftover tea bags and called me kiddo, pulled me aside one afternoon while I was restocking paper towels in the hall closet. "I don't mean to overstep," she said, "but your parents are worried sick. Maybe you're being a little stubborn?" I didn't argue. I just nodded, smiled once, and walked away. Because I'd figured it out. When the person hurting you cries first, defending yourself makes you look cruel. Around that time, my dad's texts changed tone. He started dropping names. "Saw Keegan today. He's doing fine. Has a real job. Said you were always smart. You could still fix this." Keegan Rhodes had been my best friend in high school. We lost touch after he moved out of Dunridge for trade school. I hadn't talked to him in 3 years, but my dad had, or claimed to. Weeks later, when court materials finally came together, I saw what I'd missed. Screenshots from a private church group chat. Anonymous posts, always after my interviews, always hinting at the same things. Heard Bram had another outburst. He's not well. Prayers for the Holloways. The usernames didn't matter. The timing did. This wasn't just sabotage. It was pressure coming from every direction. I didn't even notice the card at first. Lorna mentioned it like it was nothing, standing in the hallway with a clipboard tucked under her arm. "A woman came by this morning asking about you. I didn't confirm anything, but she left a card." She handed it over without drama. Plain white. Name, number. No company logo. No extra lines. Just Tamsin Kerr. I stared at it for a second too long, then slipped it into my pocket like it might burn through my hand. I didn't call. For weeks, that card stayed folded in my backpack, buried under clothes and receipts. Every time I felt it, the same thought hit me. Dad found me. This was the next move. Someone tracking me, waiting for me to slip. That's how my life worked now. Every new thing came with a hook in it. Then the call to the shelter happened. The one Lorna documented. The one that tried to turn my last safe place into another closed door. That's when it clicked. Waiting wasn't protecting me. It was keeping me exactly where they wanted me. Cornered, quiet, easy to manage. So I dug the card out that night, sat on the edge of my bed, and dialed the number before I could talk myself out of it. She answered on the second ring. Kerr. I hesitated half a second. You came by looking for me. Bram Holloway, she said like she'd been expecting the call. Good. Took you long enough? We set a time for the next morning. No small talk, no questions. She showed up right on time. Tamsin Kerr didn't look like anything flashy. Mid-40s, dark coat, hair pulled back tight, eyes that didn't wander. She carried a worn leather case like it had been through 100 airports in a few bad days. We sat across from each other in Lorna's office, door closed. No interruptions. She didn't ease into it. Your grandma hired me, she said, to keep tabs on you and to find you if you ever went missing. I didn't move, didn't blink. What? She flipped the leather case open and turned it toward me. On the inside flap, written in handwriting I knew from birthday cards and short notes tucked into books, were the words, "For Bram, when it's bad enough." My throat tightened, but I kept my face steady. Took her 11 years to give me the green light, Tamsin said. I was retained to watch from a distance. Periodic check-ins. Nothing direct unless things escalated. They escalated, I said. She nodded once. They crossed a line that holds up outside family. That phrasing stuck. Outside family, where stories didn't matter unless you could prove them. She didn't hand me comfort. She handed me a file. Thick, organized, tabs, timestamps, clean copies. The kind of paperwork that didn't argue. It showed. Start here, she said, sliding it across the desk. I opened it. Call logs. Dates lined up with my applications. Numbers traced back. Audio transcripts attached. I saw my mom's voice on paper before I even heard it in my head, posing calm, measured. I'm just a concerned community member, she'd say. I think you should know about his background. There were copies of the fake incident reports, too. Same structure every time, same tone. And notes, real notes, from managers. Call received criminal history, boring lines, deadly impact. How did you get this? I asked. Public record requests where possible, she said. And subpoenas through your grandmother's attorney when we had to. People remember when something feels off. They just need a reason to say it out loud. I kept turning pages, each one locked tighter than the last. This wasn't scattered. It was built, carefully, repeatedly. I sat there with the file open in front of me, the weight of it pressing down through the table, not guessing anymore, not doubting. I closed the folder, looked up at Tamsin and said, "Tell me what we do next." Tamsin didn't say a word when she handed me the envelope. She slid it across the table like it weighed more than paper, more than ink, like it had gravity. My name was written on the front in Grandma Sylvie's clean, upright handwriting. No loops, no flourishes. Just Bram, sharp and clear. I held it for a second, thumb pressed to the seam, already knowing what the first line would feel like. She'd written it like she knew I'd be shaking when I opened it. Freedom first, she wrote. Don't spend this trying to hurt them. Spend it building a life they can't reach. It wasn't long, just a few lines in total, but everyone was steady, like she'd rehearsed them in her head until they came out exactly right. She didn't write about justice. She didn't mention pain. She wrote about structure. I waited for records, not rumors, she said, because anything less would turn into your word against theirs, and they always win the story first. Tamsin gave me a minute before pulling out a second envelope, bigger, thicker, legal-sized, a manila folder packed with documents and account sheets. These are the trust materials, she said. Executed by Hugh Pritchard out of Mayfield Gap. Your grandmother handled the whole thing privately. The first page listed the balance. I stared at it for a second before reading it out loud to make sure it was real. $372,800. Tamsin nodded. From the sale of her nursery business, liquidated 12 years ago. My throat felt tight again. And they didn't know? She made sure of it. Trust wasn't in her will. It was a separate estate instruction. Inside the documents were clauses, lists of what I could use it for. Housing, ID replacement, legal help, education, basic transportation, no cash outs, no lump sum. It wasn't revenge money. It was a rebuild plan. She knew you, Tamsin said, knew what this could turn into. She wanted to give you a way out that didn't end in more damage. She drove me to Hugh's office that same afternoon. Brick building above an insurance agency, 2 flights of stairs that smelled like old carpet and copier toner. I held my temporary ID like it was gold. Hugh didn't look surprised when he saw me. He looked like a man checking off a box he'd been waiting years to reach. We sat in his office while he verified everything: identity, documentation, notarizations, and went over the structure of the trust. His voice was calm, practiced, not a single word of pity, just a quiet kind of respect. He didn't make me beg for adulthood. That alone almost broke me. Near the end, he handed me a small white card and said, "Your grandmother left instructions to give you this name if things turned ugly." It was a referral for Nadine Voss, civil litigation. Tamsin drove me straight there. Nadine was in her 40s, sharp suit, glasses, no time for long greetings. She took the file, flipped through it fast, then slowed down when she saw the call transcripts and the fake report formats. She tapped the edge of the folder with one finger. "This is defamation and harassment, and you have the paper to prove it." I didn't say anything. I just nodded. That afternoon, I signed the plan. Civil lawsuit, protective order, financial motion, all filed through her office, and one rule for me: no direct contact, no emotional responses, no late-night texts or attempts at making them see what they'd done. Everything through counsel. Full stop. Later, after the court filings began, I saw exactly why she made that the first rule. Because my dad's entire weapon was narrative, and court was the one place where stories had to answer to documents. I didn't see them get served. Nadine handled that through a third-party processor out of Lancaster. But I got the full picture afterward. From the affidavits, from town whispers, from the sudden shift in the air like someone had dropped a window pane on the Holloway name. They were caught off guard, completely. The server handed Dad the envelope in the church parking lot on a Sunday morning, and according to the report, he took it without a word, didn't even break stride, just tucked it under his arm like junk mail. But I knew him. That wasn't calm. That was control, something hot held behind a calm face. I got the first call at 11:20 that night, then another, and another. 12 missed calls by morning, all from the same number. The voicemails weren't begging. They were bait. First the guilt voice. "This is family. You don't do this to family." Then the sharp one. "You think you can win like this? Keep dreaming." I didn't reply. I didn't delete them either. Nadine had me forward everyone. They went into the exhibit binder. Mom played her part too, of course. She didn't call me directly, she knew better, but she called neighbors, old church friends, anyone with an ear. Said she was worried, that I was acting out, that the legal stuff was just a misunderstanding. But in a town like Dunridge, court filings spread faster than gospel. People read public records like weather updates. You don't argue with them, you react. Silas Morrow, a guy who used to fix our gutters and swap beers with Dad, asked the one question that mattered in front of a group outside Miller's Hardware. "Did you really do all this to your own kid?" He wasn't trying to start a fight. He sounded like a man trying to believe it wasn't true and coming up empty. That was the first real crack. Then Cal Dermott came forward, voluntarily, emailed Nadine the original incident report file, the one he'd received back when I applied. He hadn't deleted it, and it was still time-stamped, still traceable. Walt Renner followed next. He handed over his interview notes from that first job, including the line about a concerned citizen call before I'd even walked through the door. Myrna Keats turned out to be the surprise. She'd always meant well. I don't doubt that. But one afternoon she called Lorna crying and said, "I didn't know it mattered this much." Then she forwarded a saved voice message from Mom, thinking she was venting to a friend, saying, "I only made a few calls to keep Bram safe." The audio didn't lie, and it didn't sound like concern. It sounded like strategy. Nadine filed for a protective order the same week. The judge didn't hesitate. 600 feet, no contact, no messages through friends, no third-party communication, no exceptions. Dad violated it in 3 days. He used Bryce Landon's phone to send a text. Bryce was a mutual from years ago, used to mow lawns with me in high school. He swore in a signed statement he didn't know what the message meant. Nadine believed him. The judge didn't care. Violation logged. Then Dad tried the next move, framing me. A week later, I got a call from the Mayfield Gap auto parts store. They said someone had tried to report me for shoplifting, claimed I'd stolen a socket set, walked out without paying. Problem was, I hadn't been there. Lorna had my sign-in logs from the shelter, and the hallway cameras showed I hadn't left that day. Meanwhile, store security footage caught the real guy walking out with the item. Same height, same build as Dad, wearing a baseball cap pulled low. Nadine requested a hearing to review it all. Dad didn't show. Instead, he filed a handwritten letter claiming it was a private family matter. The judge skimmed it, set it aside, and looked straight at Nadine. She said, "Your Honor, we're moving for default judgment based on the record and repeated violations." And the judge agreed without blinking. The judgment landed clean, $92,400 plus legal fees. No fanfare, no explosion of victory. I just sat there with the papers in my hand, feeling something loosen in my chest for the first time in years. Not joy, just relief, like my body finally stopped bracing for the next hit. Nadine filed the lien on their house a week later. It froze everything. They couldn't refinance, couldn't sell, couldn't shift a penny out of it without resolving the debt. All that "we control everything" pride turned into "we can't move without asking permission." That's what accountability feels like when you're not used to it. I didn't march around Dunridge explaining myself. I didn't post screenshots or beg anyone to take my side. I let the filings speak, and they did. Dates, documents, recorded calls, witness statements. It was all there in black and white. The town didn't need a narrator. They just needed proof. People started avoiding my dad in public, not out of anger, out of discomfort. He still tried to sell his version, all shoulder shrugs, and I was just trying to help. But fewer people bought it. Mom stepped away from the church kitchen until things cooled down. They didn't. Hugh offered me a job, office coordinator, said he'd never seen someone organize evidence like that before. I told him I wasn't a lawyer. He said, "You don't have to be. You just have to know how to keep a record straight." It wasn't charity. He paid me like I was worth something. I used the trust the way Grandma intended. Got a small one-bedroom in Mayfield Gap. Clean space, working heater, no one else's name on the lease. Bought a used sedan. Reasonable miles, no rust. Opened accounts that only had my name on them. No cosigners. No shared logins. No one checking in. The first night in that apartment, the silence felt loud enough to crack drywall. I sat on the edge of the bed, hearing nothing but the buzz of the fridge and my own heartbeat. It scared me for half a second. Then I realized it was the good kind of quiet. No one tracking me. No one rephrasing my life. A few weeks in, a letter showed up forwarded from the shelter. Mom's handwriting. She didn't sign it, just said she missed me. Said, "We didn't mean to push you away." Nadine handled it. Sent a formal reminder that the protective order included letters. No contact meant no contact. Tamsin checked in now and then. Short calls. Updates. She told me months later that Mom had started therapy. Said she admitted out loud that what she'd done was wrong. I didn't run back. I didn't celebrate either. I just kept going, like Grandma told me. Stability first, freedom always. The only thing I still carry from that time is a habit. I save everything. Texts, receipts, messages, call logs, job emails. Not because I live in fear now, but because I learned what it costs when someone else gets to control the story. Now I keep my own. And the only key that fits my door is mine. Do you think Bram should ever let his parents back into his life? Drop your answer in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this one. Here's one you can use. If this hit close to home, here's the takeaway. When family keeps hurting you, you don't owe them access to your life. You owe yourself safety and clarity. If you've got the hype button, tap it to support this video and help it reach more people. Please subscribe and like. It's huge for us, and it's just one click. And drop a comment, even if it's just "good story," or tell me what you would have done.